Today we're taking a look at the MAVO Lumicurve. There are already a ton of coffee scales on the market. They have many features, but I usually just end up using basic weighing. MAVO sent this to me for testing, but after spending some time with the Lumicurve, it feels like MAVO put real effort into making those extra features actually useful, instead of just adding them for the spec sheet. Honestly, I enjoy using it. It's currently on Kickstarter, so if you're curious about it, I'll leave the link down in the description. Let's start with the unboxing. The final retail packaging might be a little different from what you see here, but the accessories should be the same or more. The scale itself looks quite stylish and feels pretty premium in the hand. Besides the main silicone pad on the scale, you also get a separate silicone pad made for espresso use. There's also a carrying case, which I think is actually pretty important. If you ever throw your scale into a bag and bring it somewhere, having some protection makes a big difference. You also get a 100-gram calibration weight, which is genuinely useful. And of course, there's also a charging cable included. Now let's take a closer look at the scale itself. The display immediately reminds me a bit of an iPhone. It's a glass panel and looks quite high-end. On the back, it's labeled with a maximum capacity of 2,000 grams, accuracy 0.1 gram, and it has a 1,000 mAh battery inside. The main body is metal, so it doesn't feel cheap or flimsy at all. The weighing platform itself seems to be plastic with pretty refined finishing. The non-slip, water-resistant silicone pad is mainly designed for pour-over, and you can swap it for the espresso pad when you want to use a portafilter. It works well with both bottomless and spouted portafilters. In terms of size, it's actually pretty close to my iPhone 16 Pro Max. The thickness is also very similar. The shape is a bit long and narrow, so it doesn't take up too much space, but it's not so tiny that it only works in one very specific setup. Most coffee scales still have pretty basic displays, but the Lumicurve uses a circular full-color screen, and I think the color layout is done really well. It looks sharp, it responds quickly, and it's easy to read. But the standout feature here is obviously the gravity sensor and the auto-rotating display. The screen can rotate into 4 different orientations depending on how you position the scale. At first, that might sound a little gimmicky, but once you actually start using it, it makes a lot more sense than I expected. For example, with an E61 machine like this, a normal square scale can sometimes get in the way of the water outlet or stick out awkwardly when you try to fit it under the group. With the Lumicurve, you can rotate it and use it in a side-facing orientation, and suddenly it fits much more naturally without blocking anything. Of course, there are also some ultra-small mini scales made specifically for espresso, and those do work well under a wide range of machines. But when you're standing directly in front of the machine, the handle can easily block the display. With the Lumicurve, you can place the screen off to the side and still keep it visible from whatever angle makes the most sense. Also, very small scales are too tight when you're using a spouted portafilter with 2 cups, and they're not ideal for pour-over either. For pour-over, if you're right-handed and feel like the usual screen position gets blocked, you can rotate the scale and move the display to the left side. Or you can keep it facing directly toward you. Or if someone's doing a demo, training, or showing a brew to someone else, the screen can just as easily face the other person. It's a small idea, but in practice it makes the scale feel a lot more flexible. Now let me walk you through the operation and the interface. The Lumicurve responds very quickly. There's basically no noticeable lag, and the resolution is very high. It uses 4 buttons. The start timer and tare buttons work like most other coffee scales, so there's no learning curve there. A short press on the top left button cycles through the different brewing modes, and unlike some other scales, you don't have to remember how many times to press or how long to hold for each function, which is really convenient. The default screen is a basic mode that shows simple weight and time. In each brewing mode, if you long press that same button, you can switch between 3 different display layouts. In pour-over mode, you can also toggle between layouts like this, and the real-time data includes weight, ratio, flow rate, and a timer. Each layout highlights different information, so you can choose what you want to focus on. Espresso mode works the same way, and personally, I really like the color choices here. Every time I switch to a new layout, it feels fresh. If you double tap the power button, you enter the settings menu, and there are quite a lot of things you can customize. There's a history function where you can check the last 3 brew curves, and in the future, the final version might add app support so you can view and share your data more easily. Espresso activation mode lets you choose between cup trigger and drip trigger, so the timer can start automatically, either from the first drop of coffee or when the cup is placed. The display mode section lets you add or remove the brew profiles you saw earlier. For example, if you never use a certain pour-over mode, you can just uncheck it. You can adjust the screen brightness and switch the unit of measurement, but I always stick to grams. You can also set the minimum detectable weight. For example, at 0.3 grams, the scale is a bit less sensitive to tiny bumps. You can turn the beep on or off, which I know many people will appreciate. You can also turn the on-screen usage tips on or off, but I think leaving them on is helpful, so you don't have to think too much about what to do next. By default, auto rotation is turned on, but if you don't like it, you can lock the display to a fixed direction. You can also choose how long before it auto powers off to save battery. There is a smart stability option as well, which basically helps the scale settle reading smoothly, and I don't really see a reason to turn that off. All these options let you shape the scale to your own style of use, and it's actually rare to see this level of customization on a coffee scale. These small details add a lot to the overall experience. I think with many coffee scales, the biggest issue isn't the lack of functions. The problem is, they try to control everything with just 2 buttons using short presses, long presses, and double taps, and you end up having to remember a bunch of timing and sequences. If you don't use it for a few days, or you lose the manual, it becomes annoying, and you just stop using those features. The Lumicurve does much better in this area. Let's look at the calibration process. The included 100-gram weight is actually very handy. My unit was already calibrated out of the box, and shipping didn't seem to affect it. But if your readings are off, recalibration is quite simple. Just long press the timer and tear buttons together for a few seconds, and the screen will show you a prompt for the next step. Now press the tear button once. The reading will change from 0 to 100. Place the 100-gram weight on the scale, and it will show calibration successful. Tap the power button to confirm and exit. From there, the scale is recalibrated, and you're good to go for your next brews. Now I'll make a cup of coffee to show you the pour-over workflow. First, I measure 15 grams of coffee beans. For this, I'm pairing the Lumicurve with the MAVO Fantox Pro for pour-over. This hand grinder is something I strongly recommend for pour-over lovers, and it's one of the hand grinders I reach for most often. It's especially good with light roast beans, and it gives a really clean and high-clarity flavor profile, not losing out at all compared to many hand grinders in the $200 and above range. I've reviewed it before, so I'll leave that video link in the description if you want to check it out. After grinding, the particle distribution is very even. Once the grounds are ready, set up your dripper, rinse the filter paper, and get everything in place. When you're ready, press tear. The Lumicurve records your dose to calculate the brew ratio, and the scale goes into a ready state. You'll see a little prompt blinking on the display. As soon as you start pouring water, it detects the flow almost immediately and starts the timer. On the screen, you can clearly see the weight, the ratio, and the flow rate changing in real time. If you want to focus more on the ratio or on the flow rate, you can switch to a different layout. When I use this, I feel like the amount of data is just right. It shows the numbers I actually care about most when I do pour-overs. I'm using the regular pour-over mode here, and the nice thing is that if I want to swirl the dripper in the middle, it doesn't confuse the scale or mess up the reading. It seems MAVO really did some research and knows this is a common move for a lot of people. When you're done, just press the timer button once to end the brew, and the scale immediately shows your brew parameters and the extraction curve. The whole process feels very smooth. If you never move the dripper during brewing, you can switch to Smart End mode. In that mode, once you lift the dripper off the scale, it pauses and finishes the brew session automatically, which is also very convenient. Next, let's look at the Espresso Workflow. If you like to weigh your dose before extraction, switch to the espresso silicone pad. Put your portafilter on the pad, press tare, and then add your ground coffee into the basket. Press the timer button once, and the Lumicurve records the dose. At this point, the display will flash, and you can remove the portafilter to do your puck prep. This step is mainly for recording your dose, so if your grinder has very low retention, and your dose is always accurate, you can skip it. Once your puck prep is done, you can rotate the Lumicurve to the angle you prefer under your machine. When you place the cups on the pad, it automatically tares to 0. Start the shot, and as soon as the scale detects the first drop of espresso, it begins timing and shows you the weight, shot time, and flow rate. If you don't like starting from the first drop, you can switch to cup trigger mode in the settings, so the timer starts when you place the cup instead. When the flow stops and there's no more liquid dripping, the scale stops automatically and shows you the extraction curve. This workflow is also very smooth, and it's hard to mess up once you get used to it. There's also a continuous espresso mode, which skips the dose weighing step and starts tracking as soon as it senses liquid. If you're pulling multiple shots in a row and just want to focus on yield and time, this can be quite handy. To sum up my experience, the MAVO Lumicurve doesn't rely on one flashy feature to attract attention. Instead, it combines the display, the interaction, the brewing modes, and real brewing workflows in a pretty thoughtful way. It has quite a few functions, but it doesn't give you a heavy learning curve, and it stays quite intuitive even if you don't use it every single day. The price point is also very attractive, especially at the crowdfunding stage. Check the link in the description to check it out. If you only want a basic scale that just weighs and times, there are obviously many options out there. But if you're looking for something that can switch smoothly between pour-over and espresso, has a more modern way of showing information, and clearly takes daily usability into account, then the Lumicurve is definitely one of the more interesting scales I've used recently. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.